Hello to our viewers at home. We are joined today by Paul Truelove, our Chief Product Officer, and today we're going to be talking about file access management. I have a few questions for you, Paul, so thanks for joining us and sharing your
Absolutely.
knowledge. Why is governing access to data stored in files so important for enterprise security and compliance programs?
Yeah, this is a hot topic for a lot of organizations, particularly as the amount of data stored in files continues to increase exponentially. And in a lot of ways, the super sensitive data that we use on a day-to-day basis ultimately ends up stored in files, not necessarily in a more structured system like a database. And the reality is, if you don't put good controls around who has access to that information, you're really leaving the organization open to a lot of not only regulatory compliance issues, but more generally just bad security hygiene. And so if you don't include that type of system, your file storage systems, in your overall identity governance program, you're really leaving the organization wide open to major issues.
Okay, and so in your opinion, would you say that most organizations are doing a good job at this, or do you think that they still kind of have work to do?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think most organizations still have work to do. There are definitely some that have attacked this problem, front and center. I think one of the realities, though, is most organizations tend to bifurcate the responsibility of governing access to file storage, often to a storage team, not the identity team. And I think what we've seen, be very successful is when those two teams come together and really, the storage team is there to inform identity about how the storage platforms work, and the identity team is there to really collaborate and provide, controls and security best practices for how people should be granted access, how that access, should evolve over time as people, go through their normal life cycle with the organization, and can help put in the audit and compliance controls to really prove that the organization has control over the access to file storage systems and the files themselves.
Okay, so it sounds like many could use some work. So if they wanted to start this process, what would your recommendation be on how they govern access in this area? How would they get started?
So generally, we recommend a couple of things. Number one, really understand where you're storing your critical sensitive data on your file storage platforms. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do. You can't just go interview the business and necessarily get all the right answers. So there's some great tools that allow you to actually go out, scan, figure out where you've got sensitive data stored across the organization. Could be on a Windows file share, could be in something like Box or Dropbox, but you really need to nail down what systems ultimately need to come into the purview of your identity management not organization, but program. And then once you've done that, you can begin to establish controls. One of the biggest challenges that we see with governing access to these kinds of environments is the fact that a lot of them are protected by Active Directory. And you can get into some very complex effective access modeling challenges. And so one of the things that you're also likely going to be doing when you're starting to really dig in and try to protect your file shares is untangling the mess that a lot of organizations have gotten themselves into, as it relates to kind of a bad hygiene in their Active Directory environment. So, find the data, understand, how you are ultimately granting access to it, and then go through your regular identity governance processes of, regular certifications of who has access to what, good preventive controls around people requesting access and the approval cycles. And ultimately, you'll find that you can very easily integrate that into your broader identity program and apply, basically the same paradigm just to the file storage environments that most people have been ignoring for, really probably ever since they existed.
Wow. Well, you've given our viewers something to think about then, little action item there. That's great information and thank you for sharing it. And we look forward to hearing again from you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.